All right, good.
Perfect. Yeah.
I want to be a robot.
Well, we can start. I'll introduce Jeff. Jeff works as a coach, a speaker, an author, and a consultant to help organizations build better products. He's the author of the award-winning Lean UX and Sense and Respond. He co-founded Sense and Respond Press with Josh Staden. And he's always thought of bringing the customer-centric, evidence-based decision-making into corporate cultures. And today he'll be presenting his new book, Forever Employable, How to Stop Looking for Work and Let Your Next Job Find You. So, well, that's interesting. Also in times of quarantine, I believe that's an interesting issue. I'll stick here the link for your book so people can pre-order it. I don't know, when is it out?
So the pre-order is open now for Kindle. So if you read on a Kindle, you can go to Amazon.com, search for me or search for Forever Employable, and you'll find the book available for pre-order. Yeah, there it is. But the print copy, currently the release date is going to be June 16th. So maybe we can bring that date in a little sooner, but the plan is June 16th.
Okay, great. Just for the people to know, you can add questions near the chat so that Jeff answers them at the end of the interview. So, well, let's start. Can you explain to the audience what the new book is about?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So it's it's interesting. I've been thinking about this book for a long time. This is a question that people have been asking me for a long time, which is, hey, you've built this consulting business, you've built this coaching business. How did you do it? What's gone into it? And I've had this little, it's in my backlog. I've got a Post-it note in my backlog that said, work on this book. Now, the interesting thing about, and the thing that kept me from working on this book for a long time was that it felt like material that was a sharp turn away from everything else that I've been doing up until now, right? We've been talking about design and product management and agile and lean UX and lean startup and digital transformation, sense and respond, all of these things, right? Design thinking. And this content about, okay, how do you build a platform for yourself, and how do you create a space for you to become a recognized authority or a thought leader on a topic, and increase your employability in a way that hopefully perseveres through any future, including quarantines, including pandemics. It felt like a really sharp turn away. And as I started to think through the content and think about writing and telling this particular story, I realized that it wasn't that big of a departure from my original content. In fact, if you're familiar with Lean UX, if you're familiar with Sense and Respond, if you're familiar with things like Lean Startup and that type of thing, you'll see a lot of very similar concepts in Forever Employable. The same concepts are there. The application is to yourself. The application is to your career and your personal development, your personal growth and professional development. It's kind of like...
It's like you're the product.
Exactly right. You're the product in this particular case. And you're thinking through how to create a situation for yourself where no matter what happens, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's disruptive technological change, whether it's a reorganization in your company, you're always confident that the next job will find you, right? There's that panic doesn't come up. And so the book is about that. And I tell the story based on it's semi-autobiographical. So I tell my story, but I don't start from the beginning. I don't tell like I was born in 1973. I start on the day I turned 35, which is when I kind of had this realization that I needed to change what I was doing, and then what I've done since then, and what I've learned, and then it's got very specific takeaways for everybody involved, for everybody who reads it, that they can practice and start doing now to start building this platform for themselves.
Great. And who do you think the book is for? Which is the target for this book?
I think it's funny. All the stuff that I teach, I practice on myself, right? And so this book was a hypothesis. I've run experiments on it, and when I started writing it, I had a target persona. I had a reader persona, and my primary reader persona was a mid-career knowledge worker. So somebody who's been working for about 10 years, roughly on average about 10, 12 years in knowledge work. So, product managers, designers, engineers obviously make sense for that, but also, business people, marketers, advertising executives, people who work in HR, people who work in finance, but generally people who have been working for a while and are reaching the point where it's not clear what the next step will be or how it's going to show up. So that was the primary reader persona. I do believe the book is valuable to a much broader audience, but that's who I had in mind when I wrote it.
Great. And how's your writing process? Do you treat the book itself as a product? Do you test over the book? Do you do that exercises, or how do you deal with it?
So it's interesting. It's varied. It's varied over the years based on the book itself. So this is my fourth book, and if I go, so Lean UX was the first book. Lean UX, we wrote Lean UX from firsthand experience. And we knew from that firsthand experience that there was a market, that there was demand, and that the content was good because we were teaching it and working and working this way for a while. So that one was relatively easy. Sense and Respond was a bit more, was a business book, and we had to go do a lot of research. And so there was a lot of experimentation around topics and ideas and blog posts to test the waters to see what would resonate. Lean versus Agile versus Design Thinking was the same thing. It started as a tweet, it became a blog post, and then a Medium piece and a presentation, and then ultimately a book. So a lot of evidence-based decision-making about how much to invest in this idea. This one's interesting. The writing process for this one was very different because the trigger for even doing this in the first place was a continuous stream of inbound requests for this content. So I never thought about writing this at all. Like, it wasn't an idea that I had. It was an idea that came from the outside. And people over the years, people kept asking me, hey, how did you do this? Can you talk about this? Can you share that information? And that's using that as the driver, I began to put forward a presentation. So I wrote, I had a presentation I had to give last year to a group of product management executives about, and it was described as tell the author's journey. So how did you become an author, et cetera? And I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to at least figure out what this story looks like. And so I did this presentation and I liked the way that it worked. And based on that, I chopped it up into chapters. And in this particular case, I worked with I've had a co-author on two of my last three books. So Josh Seiden on Lean UX and Josh Seiden on Sense and Respond. For this book, I got a writing partner. And there's a difference between a co-author and a writing partner. A writing partner is someone that you hire and that you pay money to help you get the writing done and get it finished more quickly. Whereas a co-author is a partner that you work with and you share the credit, you share everything about it. It's our book rather than my book. So in this case, I had a writing partner who I hired to help me get the words in my own voice, because this book. So what's really interesting, and I know I'm talking a lot, but what's really interesting about this book is that it sounds more like me talking, like right now as you hear me talking, than any of my other books. And because it's a story that starts about me, I think that's really nice. You're going to hear my voice in it. And the partner helped me with that. And then we would refine and edit and do interviews. And in this particular case, I'm trying to think if we did, we've been doing a lot of, so as we've been writing the book, there has been a lot of content that we've been putting out, short snippets of content on Twitter and on LinkedIn primarily, to test how people would react to this type of content coming from me. And overall, the reactions have been very, very good. And so this was a very unique process, different than the others, but I'm very, very proud of what we've created.
Really.
Wow.
Also, the cover, I know you've tested the cover. I've seen many like different versions of it, and I really like the actual result. You always use that like infinite sign. So
yeah,
that's.
Can you guys?
Is there something you like? Yeah, we can see that.
There you go. Yeah, super happy with the cover and the way it came out.
Yes, it's really nice, and it looks like really, I don't know, professional and clean. And the yellow color is something like it's I don't know, it transmits something that it's nice. So I don't know why the infinite symbol.
Yeah, look, it worked for us. It worked. Sense and Respond also had the similar symbol on the cover, so there's some continuity there from a branding perspective. I've been using that symbol. You can see even in the link you posted in the chat, the favicon from my website is that symbol. To me, it symbols continuity. It signifies continuity and continuous improvement and continuous learning. Right? Sense and Respond was all about how do you build a company that is always learning, always improving, always getting better. This is a very similar concept, but instead of how do you build a company, this is how do you build a career, right? How do you build a professional life that is always learning and that's always improving? And so there's this kind of infinite continuity, right? We're all like the premise here is that if you want to build this recognized expert platform, this thought leadership platform, then you've really got to start to build this sense and respond relationship with the people who you're going to provide this information to. And it's a never-ending conversation, right? Because what you provide today is not necessarily going to be valuable forever, right? Some of it certainly might, but you're going to have to continue and evolve that conversation. You're going to have to continue and evolve your delivery channels. You're going to have to continue and evolve the way that you engage with people. And so the infinity symbol kind of helps with that as well. It's a good branding thing. And I really like the way this came out. We did test this. It was, again, writing a book, not a very agile process. I mean, you could release one chapter at a time, get feedback, update and move. And I know people who do that. That sounds like death to me. I don't know if I could do that. But and so there's some subjectivity. You send out for reviews, you get some feedback, but at some point you got to say that it's done. But the most subjective part of it is the cover, right? And I wanted this to look like a business book. And there's a cover designer I've worked with in the past, and he came up with some ideas, and they were okay. They weren't great. And so I got 2 more ideas from 2 other cover designers. And I ran a survey on UserZoom. And I just said, look, tell me a little bit about yourself. Here are 4 options for my new book. This is what the book's about. Which one is your favorite? And this one was by far the winner. I think I had ultimately getting 350 votes and this thing got 280 of the
Wow,
voters.
yes.
So
No doubts.
yeah, by far the biggest winner of the bunch.
Okay. On the book's website, you mentioned the idea of taking back control of our careers.
Yeah.
Why do you think our careers have gotten out of control? And why is it time to take it back?
So there's a couple thoughts here, right? First of all, I think that company loyalty is dead. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, really, I do. I think that the kind of I think back to my father's generation, right? My father's generation, my friend's father's generation. Many of those folks worked for 35, 40 years at the same place. And there was a mutual loyalty, right? I will stay loyal to the company and the company will stay loyal to me, right? They'll make sure that I have a job, that I have a pension, that I have a good retirement plan. I don't think that exists anymore. I think that that's dead. And
it's definitely not millennial, that idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that regardless of how much time you've put in at an organization, right? You might feel that the company owes you something, but as soon as times get tough, and times are tough right now, right? Layoffs are hitting everybody hard right now. And you might say, but I've been here 15 years and I've done everything you've asked. Yeah, well, times are tough and we have to save money, so you're out. So I think that we have to set ourselves up for success because we can't predict when that's going to happen. And so if we can take back control of our careers, if we can take back control of when we're employed and how we're employed, we're in a fundamentally different position than certainly I was in the first 10 years of my career, and many people are today. You know, the example, again, we talked about reader personas earlier. The reader persona I have in mind is a good friend of mine. A good friend of mine he's my age, so he's mid-40s. He's been working professionally for 20, 25 years. He's got a good job. He's climbed his way up the ladder. He's in technology. And every time there is a shift in the market or a change in the management in his organization or something, he panics and he's like, oh, I got to get my CV together and I got to get ready. I got to start looking for jobs and applying for jobs. Right. And I don't want him or anybody else to feel that panic anymore. And I've got some ideas about how to stop that from happening. And so that's kind of what's in the book. And that's that's kind of how to take control of the, of your career and your life back. That's the goal, right? There's a calmness that comes with achieving this level of forever employability, right? Because you know that, okay, like if the job goes away tomorrow, I've got 3 other things I can lean on. So that's the focus.
Okay. And in relation to that, you talk about safety nets. Do you want to explain a bit about that? Why they are important, or what would you advise to somebody that wants to like build that safety net? And try to be ready for this.
Yeah, and to be clear, look, I'm going to skip over the financial safety net. Right? You should always be saving some money if you can. Right? But that's not what the book is about, and I'm not a personal finance expert. There's lots of people who talk about that. But the safety net that I'm talking about is a community. It's a community, a network, and a platform of people whom you have provided value to over time. Right? And I don't mean people who have hired you necessarily. Certainly those are good people to have in your network. But I'm talking about people with whom you've interacted, people that you've provided your expertise to, people you've shared your work with, people that you've tried to help be more successful. And if you can create that community, either join a community or build that community around yourself, it serves as a safety net, right? And that so that when something comes up, you can alert the community. Hey, it looks like my current gig is ending and I'm looking for my next thing, right? All of a sudden, you've got evangelists, people who will evangelize on your behalf. They'll say, "Oh, Jeff, he's always kind of written about his work, and I've really learned a lot from him. Let me recommend him over here." Or, "I know somebody at this company where you're applying for that job. Let me say something to you," right? Or let me promote your next public event so that you can start to build your consulting career, for example. It's the platform, the network, and the community that you build around you that serves as your safety net, because those leads for the next thing, the next gig, come from that network.
Great. Which is your favorite chapter in the book?
Look, my favorite chapter is towards the end. I talk about giving it all away. And I love it all. I love it all. Like, you're asking me to pick between my children, right? It's like, which one's your favorite child? I don't know. I like them all. But here's the thing. I think there's two parts. The book's pretty short. It's about 100 pages total. There are two parts in the book that talk about, there's a part that talks about storytelling, and there's a part that talks about giving it all away. And I think that those are two things that perhaps for an audience of people who are familiar with my existing content, this might be slightly new and different for them. So first of all, storytelling. Storytelling, communication, writing, presenting, to me is, speaking is one of the most, if not the most important skill you can have right now as a designer, as a product manager, as an engineer, as in any profession. And we talk about storytelling in the book as a differentiation in your level of success. Why? Well, because if there are 4 people, 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, right, talking about the same things that you're talking about, one way for you to stand out, there are lots of ways for you to stand out, but one way for you to stand out is in the quality of your storytelling, right? How well do you understand your target audience, right? To be clear, this is design, right? It's design work. You may not be moving pixels around, but you're designing an experience, right? How well do you know your target audience? How well can you communicate to them in words, in visuals, in video, in, I don't know, in assets, so that they recognize you as the most valuable voice in a sea of voices about the same thing. So storytelling, super, super key, and one of my favorite parts of the book. And the other part, and to me, it was a difficult learning, and one of the most powerful techniques that I've come across is giving it all away. This is completely unintuitive, right? Because we're talking about being employable. Being employable means that you get work, which means you get paid, right? The more you can give your stuff away, the more that you can make sure that everybody has it, the more comes back to you. It's completely counterintuitive, and I didn't get it, I didn't believe it, and I didn't understand it for a long time. But what I learned through trial and error and experimentation and iteration and ultimately evidence from the market is that the more I share, the more transparent I am about my wins, my losses, where I screwed up, right? What I learned from that, the more that I give things away, the more comes back. And that's something I wasn't particularly good at for a long time, but I learned to get better at it.
Which role do you think social media plays in that game, in giving all away, and also in staying forever employable? Because today there's a lot of talk about like personal branding and building your personal brand and that stuff. So I don't know, what do you think? You're really active like on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion about that?
Look, I believe social media plays a big role in this. I think it provides us with a distribution, communication, networking, and frankly, a marketing platform for the work that we're doing and the work that we'd like people to know about. So we've got, and again, you have to choose your social media platform that suits you and your audience best. I like Twitter. I've been there since the beginning. I've been there, I think, for 13 years, which is just bizarre to even think about. And so I've built up a good following there. I've got a decent community there. And despite Twitter being, you know, I don't know if you know the expression, a dumpster fire most of the time, right? There are good parts to it, and I find that I can create good conversations there. I also like LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's come up really nicely lately in becoming kind of an adult version of Twitter, and adult in a good way, not in the adult entertainment, but, you know, adult, mature, like a professional version of Twitter, which I like a lot. I'm not a Facebook user. If it works for you, that's terrific. I'm just not there. And Instagram for me is a personal photo album. So for me, it's LinkedIn and Twitter. But again, I'm not saying anything bad about these other platforms. I do talk about Medium and other blogging platforms in the book a little bit as good distribution channels. Ultimately, though, my preference is to own my own content. And when you put that content out on other platforms, they will distribute it for you and you will get traffic, but you don't own that page. They could take it down at any moment. They can, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I like having everything under my own brand, under my own page at this point.
Great.
So, yeah. So anyway, so big fan of social media, and it's a key part in building this network. It's not the only part, but it's big for me, and it's been really helpful.
Great. So, well, my last question is, if you had to give one piece of advice regarding career for somebody who, I believe most of the audience here are designers, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that, and for a designer to achieve, maybe in these times of quarantine, so something that they can do like immediately, they have to start working on something to be forever employable. Which is your first advice?
Start writing. Really, like, to me, that's the advice that I give everybody. Start writing. Even if you don't know how to write, even if you think you don't know how to write, start practicing now. Write every day, 250, 300 words. Publish something on your blog once a week or once every 2 weeks. Just learn how to communicate with the written word, learn how to tell a story, learn how to share your experiences, learn how to deliver that value to people who might care about it. There's a thing, you know, it's interesting. I talked about this the other day, and I remembered, I wrote a blog post, and this is going to date me a little bit. I think the first public blog post I ever wrote, I think it's the first one, was in 2003, I think, so 17 years ago, in 2003, and it was a comparison of Visio wireframes versus HTML wireframes, right? That was what the piece was about, right? And you know, and when I started writing, I was like, I'm going to write about UX because that's what I know about. And that's certainly what I knew about back then. And I asked myself, what even in 2003, right? What could I write about UX that isn't already out there? And the interesting thing that I've learned over the years, and this is also in the book as well, is that yes, everything has been written about 1,000 times, right? But you know what? No one has written about it from your point of view. No one has your story, right? No one has your experience. And to me, that's your USP, your unique selling proposition, or your unique value proposition, is that it's your experience, right? So no one has done that. And so if you want to write about wireframing tools and comparing them, awesome. There's 1,000 articles out there like that already, but none of them have your perspective, right? So if you can learn how to write and learn how to tell your story in a compelling way, that's where you start to build the foundation for forever employability, right? That's kind of that's what worked for me, and that's what I would recommend. And it's practice. I'll tell you another quick anecdote. We wrote the first version of Lean UX, which, by the way, it's in its second edition now, and we're writing the third edition later this year. So the third edition of Lean UX will be out next year, which is super exciting. But we wrote the first edition of Lean UX between 2010 and 2012. In 2016, we wrote the second edition. When I went back in 2016 and I read Lean UX version 1, because it's been a while, I hadn't read it in a while, and I wanted to read it and see where we're going to update it and that kind of thing. I was so embarrassed. I was like, really, I was like, every word, I was just like, oh my God, I can't read this. Like, because for me, in 4 years, I had become such a better writer just by doing it, right? It's like exercising, right? Or running. Today you can run 10K, in a year you can run 20K or 50K or whatever it is, right? So the practice makes perfect, right? And I'm a little terrified to go back and read version 2 version 3 because I'm terrified of the writing. But you get better at this stuff. So writing, the bottom line is a very long answer to start writing.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us, and congratulations on your book. So, well, let's move on to the questions. I don't know if somebody has a question that's in Spanish, I can translate it. So maybe you can write it, and then also Jeff knows Spanish, so he can read too.
Listen, I'll tell you what. If you write the question in Spanish, I'll ask for a translation if I don't understand it. Give me a chance first, okay?
Okay, great. Well, let's start with this question by Brian Wish. It says, Jeff, what's the number one thing you can do to stay employable forever if I start today? Well, you've already...
Yeah, so I think I just answered that, right? I think the number one thing you can do is to start telling your story. And I'll add one thing really quickly. If for some reason writing is not your thing, you try it, you struggle, you just can't do it. For example, I hate running. Like when I exercise a lot, I don't run. I hate it, right? No matter how hard I try, just unless someone is chasing me, I'm not running, right? And so if writing is not your thing, try another medium, right? Record videos, do an audio podcast, slideshows, whatever it is. Figure out how to start communicating your vision and practice that.
Great. Well, Rebecca Harvey says, what was the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself whilst writing the book?
About myself, I'll tell you, this is really interesting. As the book was coming together, I told you before, this is the first book that if you've read my other books, I like them. I think they're generally well written, but I feel like my personality is missing from those books in a lot of ways. Right? I like to tell jokes. I'm sarcastic, right? My personality is in this book, 100%, and then some. And I learned to become comfortable with that, like being more open about, like putting more of me, of myself in the book rather than being all business, right? You need to go write and, give talks and that kind of thing. So I learned to be more vulnerable about putting more of myself and my personality in there. So that's number one. And I learned that people respect that more. I was really worried, I was like, who the hell's going to want to hear about my personal struggles, or who's going to want to hear like me open up about, I don't know, some challenge that I had. Like I felt like everyone's got problems and there's so much other crap in the world. Why would I pile my stuff on top of that? That feels selfish and dumb. But I learned that there's authenticity in the conversation that I have with my network and my community that I haven't had before. And the writing of this book has brought that out, and that's been a huge learning for me. And I'm going to do much more of that moving forward as well. So much more personal. There's business aspects in there as well, but much more personal side of it as well.
That's great. Well, Rafa Garcia says, do you consider that soft skills are more important than hard skills?
So look, I think that the majority of hard, and I know there's been a lot of research sort of debunking this concept of hard and soft skills, but I understand the differentiation here. Look, you can learn hard skills, right? Can you get good at them? There's talent and practice, right? But you can learn to use the design tools to create good looking output. I believe that today, it's far more valuable to be skilled in what have traditionally been known as soft skills. So for example, I believe facilitation is a key skill for designers and beyond. I know there's a big designer audience today, so I want to address that. But facilitation is huge in that. I think that research skills are super important, and the quality of humility to motivate you to go do research is probably the most important thing you can start to stack in when it comes to soft skills. And I want to touch on that for just a second. Humility, in my experience, I do a lot of work with executives now in big companies. And my experience has been that as you go up in an organization, the quantity of humility goes down, right? There's kind of an inverse, it's inversely proportionate, right? The higher up in an organization you go. And I believe that it's because there's a misunderstanding about what humility actually means, right? Humility, people perceive it to be a giving up of control or a giving up of vision or of leadership. And it's not that at all, right? Humility is being willing to change your mind in the face of evidence that contradicts your opinion. That's it. An old friend of mine from California, Janice Fraser, always says, strong opinions loosely held, right? That's humility. And to me, as a soft skill, kind of as a driver for getting better at the soft skills, humility is the number one driver of that. So the point is this. Look, if you're a mid-career knowledge worker, you've been working for 10 years roughly or more, you've got experience, you've got expertise, and you've got strong opinions, right? Awesome, right? Bring those to work, bring those to your conversations, bring those to your colleagues. But if the evidence that we start to collect in the process of doing the work contradicts your strong opinion, you're willing to let it go. That's humility. And I think that if we can teach that or teach people to respect that and then to embrace that and then to use that to drive things like research, like customer development, like experimentation, etc., then we start to build a much broader skill set and a much more sustainable skill set, right? Because look, I mean, the joke is, I told you that article I wrote in 2003 about Visio wireframes, right? Who the hell uses Visio anymore, right? Like, we're going to throw all these tools away over time, right? What are we going to stick with, right? Our mindset, our approach to work, our humility, right? Our curiosity. So yeah, far more important in my opinion.
It's the next one. Diane K says, what advice do you have for mid-career workers changing industries?
That's really interesting, right? Because I've had a couple of these questions already in the last week or so. Look, changing industries is risky. And if you look at all the content and all the material I've created to date, right, co-created, created, built on top of, right? So lean UX, sense and respond, lean and agile design thinking, and you add in things like lean startup, design thinking, Scrum, agile, all of those things, right? All of those things, all of those ideas, those methodologies are rooted in risk mitigation, right? The reduction of risk. That's all that stuff is, right? Reducing the risk of building something that people don't want. So if you're changing career, you've got risk, right? The risk is your skills aren't transferable. You end up hating the new industry. You can't make a lateral move, right? You have to take a demotion to move, right? There's all kinds of risks, right? Maybe you won't make as much money in the other industry. Maybe you'll make more money, right? Who knows? And so the advice I have for you is write down those risks. Identify those risks, right? Identify all the things that scare you about making that transition, and then rank them. Rank those risks into kind of like from the biggest risk, the one that will break your transition to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And then work your way down that list and research, experiment, probe into those risks, right? So for example, let's say, I'll try to make this concrete. Let's say you're shifting from design to product management, right? And you're convinced that product management is the job for you, and it's going to be great, and you're going to make more money, and you're going to be forever employable. Cool. What's the biggest risks there? Well, one of the biggest risks is that you're going to enjoy being a product manager more than you enjoy being a designer, right? Or less, right? I'm sorry. That you're assuming that you'll be comfortable and enjoy being a product manager. One way that you might de-risk that is to go and interview 5 different product managers at 5 different companies and ask them about their day-to-day and ask them what they do and ask them how they feel about that, right? It's a technique straight out of the product development playbook, right? Apply that to de-risk your career move, right? So, and then you can run these experiments for all of your risks to get a sense of whether or not this is a good transition for you, right? One thing you can do, for example, is you don't have to jump in wholesale into this new career, right? For years, when I was living in the US, I would moonlight. In other words, like I had a full-time job, and in the evenings and on the weekends, I did side projects. And so do side projects in the new industry or the new field to get a sense for it before you make that big commitment and give up the thing you have now. So that's the advice that I have on that.
Great. Argenis Alvarez says, one question that I got from my student and mine as well is how they overcome the fear of failure while thinking to change careers.
Yeah, so I think I have the same answer here, right? So
yes.
So it's really the same answer is, look, the fear of failure is one of those top risks, right? Can I be a good product manager? What if I suck at it, right? What if I get fired? I get that, right? I get that all the time, and I feel that. I feel that a lot, believe it or not. So how do you de-risk that? How do you can you take an online product management course and get a better sense of how it works? Can you join a product manager community and ask, entry-level questions there, right? There's all kinds of things that you can do ahead of that career shift to de-risk it. And to kind of, and in doing so, this is the amazing part about this, right? In doing those activities, you're building your community, right? You're introducing yourself to this, hey, right? And I'm thinking about being a product manager. Oh, welcome. Let's tell them, right? So you're starting to build the community that ultimately you'll be a part of if you choose to continue down that path.
Okay. Marisol Cajigal says, I'm 33 in the process of a career shift and moved overseas just before COVID explosion.
Right.
What would you recommend in this special context in order to continue with my shift process while inserting myself in a new working environment culture?
Yeah, listen.
That's really tough.
It's a really tough question. I'm gonna tell you stories to try to help you. So I'll do some experience sharing, And I hope that it'll help, because I've never lived through a pandemic before. I hope to live through this one. And so changes are super fast, right? So I'm involved in a big project with an internationally distributed team. So there's 5 of us in 4 different countries, and our client is in India. None of us are in India. Okay. So that's the scope of the project. It's a big client, and it's a big project, and it's a lot of work. We had a plan, we had a strategy, we had dates and meetings and flights and hotel reservations in Mumbai, right? All that stuff was happening for us. And then this hit, right? And everything, like all of our plans basically evaporated, because the client's like, oh crap, now I got to shift my thing too. Now, one of the things that's happened with that client is that 10,000 employees became a distributed team overnight. So we said, look, how can we help? We have a plan, we've got a strategy, but transitioning 10,000 people to working in a distributed form was not on our roadmap. But as a team, we pivoted very quickly, and we said, look, how can we help them now? With the skill sets that we have, with the knowledge that we have, with the relationships that we have with them, how can we be of service in this new context? And we immediately pivoted all of our efforts to help them make this transition, to support them, to coach them, to guide them, to provide resources, to you name it, we're doing it, and very, very quickly. The other work, it's proceeding in parallel, but currently it's secondary to this pivot. So one thing I would consider asking yourself is, okay, how can I take my skill set? I've just moved to this new reality, this new culture, this new environment, right? How can I take what I do and help make the transition a little bit easier or more effective, or more productive, or whatever it is? And that's something that I would consider, because that way you're immediately showing value, even though it might not be the exact value you were hired for. We weren't hired to transition 10,000 people to distributed working, right? But that's what I'm doing right now, right? And that's okay. The client's getting value from us. There's still a good relationship there, and we're going to continue our work in parallel to that. So I hope that helps. So I don't have a good answer for you. I had a story.
Also, Marisol, you can reach out to us to talk or something, maybe. Adriana Freitas says, how to get what you're writing to be in front of more people? How to cut into the noise? If everyone writes, who reads?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Okay, here's some thoughts on that. My initial answer was going to be, I don't know. But I do have some ideas. So here's what's worked for me. Okay, so again, experience sharing more so than, I don't know if this is the only answer. Pick a topic. So pick a topic that you know something about and that you're passionate about. So something that you're comfortable and want to continue talking about for a long time. Start sharing your experience practically and tactically about that topic consistently. And so what do I mean by that? Let's say you decide you're going to do a podcast about prototyping, right? Let's say you're going to do a podcast on prototyping, right? Because you're an expert prototyper in a variety of tools, okay? So first of all, every podcast should talk about prototyping, right? You should have a podcast that comes out consistently. So if you decide you're going to publish every 2 weeks, publish every 2 weeks. Be humble in that communication. Again, back to humility. Talk about what you know, talk about what you don't know, share what didn't work, not just what did work, and share what you hope to learn from your audience. Always prompt your audience for feedback. Always have a call to action. Hey, what was your experience? What did you do when you faced this? What did you do when you used this tool? And see what happens. Initially, because you're right, Adriana, it's going to feel like you're shouting into space, right? But I think that if you're consistent, if you're on topic, and you are consistently delivering value, then eventually the audience will come. Now, that you should tell people that you're doing this, right? So publish your stuff on social media, start a newsletter, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your meetups, tell your communities, right? But consistent sharing of high value, vulnerable to some extent information, that's how you start to get ahead of some folks. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of garbage out there. Just because everybody's writing doesn't mean that it's good, right? In fact, a lot of it is not good. And that's your opportunity. Your opportunity is to be better. The other thing too, this is really important too, is participate in the communities that already exist around your topic, share your expertise there, and then say things like, hey, if you want to read more about this, I wrote about it on my blog post, and drop a link, right? So that you start to engage with the community, right? That's the key.
Rick Pla says, how many people, more or less, read your first book before launching and help you improve it?
Lean UX? That's a good question. Not many. 15, maybe? You have to remember, well, you don't know this, but I wrote it 4 times. It was awful first 3 times, really. The last time was not awful because Josh Seiden joined the project. Each time it went out for review, I think we sent it to 7 or 8 people. Am I still there? No.
Yeah, yes, you're here. Well, it froze. Okay. Well, he'll be back soon. There's only one question left. If there's any more questions, you can leave them so that Jeff can answer them when he's back. Bueno, Juan.
¿Qué tal?
Podemos hablar nosotros mientras tanto
Sí,
de cosas mucho menos interesantes,
exacto, sí.
pero bueno.
Bueno, muy interesante todo lo que escuchamos hasta el momento.
Sí. Sí. Ahora ahí hay un chat. I can see and hear you. Oh, Jeff, you have to press to go on stage. Let me invite you. I just sent the invitation for you
I'm
to
back.
go on stage.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Great.
Okay, yeah.
Welcome back.
Excellent. Sorry about that. I've been having connection issues this morning. So maybe one more question before we go.
Yeah, there's a question here from Tanya Paz. It says, if you were to hire a designer now, which sweet spot, good plus passion together, would be more valuable?
It's sweet spot. Good plus passion together would be more valuable. I'll tell you what I would hire for. So obviously, depends on the level of experience, but I would hire for curiosity and humility. I know I keep saying the same thing, but that's what I would hire for. Somebody who's always looking for a better way to do things, right? Someone who's never fully satisfied, right? Satisfied enough to let it ship, right? Which is really important, right? But always like, okay, that shipped. Maybe there's a better way to do it, right? To me, that is such a critical skill because I've worked with so many, forgive me, asshole designers who are like, it's blue and it's perfect and don't question me, right? And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm done with you forever, right? So that is, that's what I would hire for.
Great. Well, we can now give like the surprise of the giveaway. we told people over the email this before the event, but we are going to share a form that Jeff has made for us, where he's going to give away 2 copies of his book. So if you want to participate, you can complete it and submit the form, and well, you'll choose who will win.
Yeah, we'll choose a couple from those. I want to send you a print copy, so it's going to take maybe 4 to 6 weeks for me to do that. And so, but if you can fill out the form, we'll pick 2 winners. We'll let you know, and then we'll get you the book as soon as it's available, so that you can have it if that works for you. So if you fill out the form, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been great for us. We are big fans too, so it was like a talk for us too. So, well, see you soon, and good luck with your book.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josefina, again for having me. It's good and working with me again. It's good to see you guys, and I really appreciate this. And again, if anybody's got any questions, I want to put my email address here in the chat as well. Feel free to send me an email. If you didn't get your question answered, I'd love to hear from you. And I know you should always check out Bardo and their awesome work if you need design.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.